everyone. So, let's see. I wanted to talk about politics today. So, I've never been political at all in this incarnation. And there's a few reasons for that. One, I had a past incarnation that I was a politician. And when I discovered that, I actually knew that from the time I was 4 years old. So I knew about it my entire life. My mom told me about it. So I had this experience when I was 4 years old where we went into a presidential office, home office, in his library, in his study. And I was 4 years old when this happened. So I was with my mom and dad, and we were taking a tour with a group of people. And I went in, I sat down on the chair at the desk, and I was like, oh yeah, in this drawer is such and such, and my this and my that, and over here on this left drawer is this and my this and my that. And at first people thought I was just playing. But then I opened the drawer, and the people that were standing near me who had heard what I said looked in the drawer and saw that what I was talking about was in the drawer, and were shocked, of course. And my mother quickly was like, oh shit, so she went to grab me, and the person said, have you been here before? And I was like, no, I've never been here before. This is my office though. And I started telling them all this stuff about the past and about this person and the memories that I had in relation to this person. And my dad freaked the fuck out. Get her out of here now. He was looking at my mom like, get her out of here right now. It was a moment, where my dad was really not happy. So my mom whisked me up and took me outside and started talking to me. And then when I was older, she asked me if I remembered that experience. I'm like, oh yeah, I was him, blah, 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 And back at that time when I was 3, 4, and 5 years old, I was telling my parents, or telling my mom predominantly, who I was, who I'd been, all the lifetimes that I'd lived, all these different pieces of information that she wrote down. She literally wrote it all down because it was getting to the point where she wanted to remember everything. So she wrote it all down, and she then told me later on, when I was in my late 19, 20 years old, she told me about all the things she had written down, and it was called the Saga of Sarah, right? And she had it in a journal, which I then received when she died. And we cleaned out the house that I grew up in, and it was in storage for a long time. And I had this resistance to reading this information because there was other stuff in there that I was just not privy to or didn't want to know about, right? So what ended up happening, though, is that box of information, those writings got manipulated out of my possession in a way that was I wouldn't have known that it was happening, but basically the box got lost. Okay. Fortunately for me, though, I had already read most of it, and so I had the memory of her telling me. And then I had the information that I had already read out of her journals to confirm for me that it was real. And I have had memories since then about that incarnation and who I was and the things that happened to me during that time. So, because I have been so disgusted with the way that the government has operated, Or should I say the deep state government? There's a difference. There are two governments, you guys. There's the good guys and the bad guys. It's really simple. And so we're watching two different governments operate at the same time. Okay? We're watching the good, noble, some of them military, some of them not, but the noble people within the governmental structure that are doing their damnedest to keep us alive and to keep us moving in a forward positive direction. And then we have the deep state, which is scratching and clawing to hold on to the narrative that has been orchestrated and planned meticulously, right, over a long period of time. And they are not willing to lose that narrative, and they are not willing to lose their plan of the Great Reset. Okay? They're calling it the Great Reset. Now, what we need to understand is in that agenda is the collapse of society and the rebuilding of a new world, which doesn't include the human beings that are present on the planet at this time. Their intention is to wipe out 90% of humanity. So this is why I have not been political, because those in the position of power in the political structure made me want to vomit. From the very beginning. They've always made me want to vomit. And that could be partially because I lived in, near DC when I was a child, and I was exposed to politicians. And when I say exposed, I mean exposed as a very young child to politicians. So to me, it was like Resident Evil, right? Like literally Resident Evil. Like I could not stomach it. And so I was very resistant and very, like this for most of my life. So now, for the first time in my 51 years of existence / plus, okay, I can't tell you why I have this gut feeling about this, but because I was involved on some level with politicians in my past, in my childhood, I have never trusted politicians. But I chose to study, macroeconomics in college. And actually before that, when I was in my teens, I went to this advanced course at UCLA, and I was involved in some stuff back then. And I studied macroeconomics, and that was one of my minors. It was my minor. My major was architecture. And so I decided that I was never going to be political, but that I was going to go about helping the world in a way that, because everyone said, Sarah Lee, she should be a politician. It's like, oh my God, absolutely not. That is the last thing I'm going to do. Sorry, but they were like, you have the personality of a politician, you have the personality of, and I took that as an insult. I took that as like, oh my God, how could you possibly say that about me? That is so rude. Like, I took it personally and thought it was disgusting that people were saying I had the personality of a politician, that I had the personality of a superstar, and so for me, I was going towards acting for a while, What they were basically saying is I had the power to influence through my personality and my voice and my charm, or whatever that is, that factor, that it factor. And that I understand, because I'm an authentic, sovereign individual, and I have a voice, and I have a perspective, and I have my own sort of viewpoint. I'm a very much an individual person. eccentric. That's the word. People call me eccentric a lot. And so for me, I'm like, I'm not that eccentric, right? But I am in certain ways. So my perspective, I have found, is valuable to others at times. And because of my experience in life, it has given me a certain perspective that then helps me to be more neutral and more able to see all the different sides of an equation. So right now, I'm struggling with taking a side. I've never been political, like I said, so I've never categorized myself as Republican or Democrat. They both repulsed me, to be quite frank. I don't believe in taking sides. That's something I just don't. I feel like being in the center, walking the line between, each side is a better place to be than taking a side or voting for one candidate or another. And I haven't voted. There's one time that I voted and I regretted it. And that was in 2008 when someone convinced me to vote for someone. And my stomach turned and I was just sick to my stomach and I did it and I shouldn't have done it. I was totally manipulated into going and voting and I'm so sorry that I did it. But I learned my lesson from that. And what I learned is that I need to be well educated if I am going to step into that arena. I need to be well educated if I'm going to vote. If I'm going to be a part of that at all, I need to be well educated. I need to know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I need to know what my beliefs are in relation to that. And I need to not speak out of my ass, right? I need to know what the issues are. I need to know what's going on. I need to be educated. And so what I'm finding right now is I'm observing friends and family and people that I know and just observing society. And what I notice is those that are educated have a very specific opinion and it is neutral. Those that are not educated, that are listening to the narrative, are against, right? And so for me, it's like, get educated. If you don't know what's going on, pay the fuck attention, do your research, and figure it out. Because an uneducated voter is dangerous. Period. An uneducated voter is dangerous to me because they will make decisions based on the narrative that they're listening to, not based on their own opinions and how they resonate with one specific subject matter or another. So they're going to take all that information and the fear and the emotional body, they're going to make decisions out of their emotional body, not out of their logical mind of reason. Now, here's the funny thing. My whole life, right? My father and my sister specifically told me that I wasn't a logical person, that they would just insult me about like, you need to get your shit together. You don't have your shit together. Like, da-da-da-da-da, blah, 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 blah. They were always insulting me based on the fact that I made decisions from my gut instinct, right? Rather than logical, scientific fact, because they're both scientists, right? But what that did is that developed my instinct so clearly that is what I trust. I trust the resonance. Oh, hold on. It's giving me some weirdness. It's trying to interrupt my broadcast. There we go. Are you back? Okay. What it did is it sharpened my intuition. It sharpened my knowingness, my direct knowingness about what I truly believe. It made me really force myself to be clear about my perspective, to be clear about my understanding, to be clear about what was important to me as a person and what was important to me in relation to being of service to the world and what the world needs. Not what the world wants, what the world needs, and how I am going to do my part in that scenario, right? So regardless of how you feel about one person or the other, they are not the leader, king of the world or queen of the world. They're not. We are all sovereign individuals, and we all have to step into that fully and completely and be fully embodied in order for this world to move forward in a way that makes sense and in a way that benefits all beings. And I'm not talking about just humans. I'm talking about all kingdoms of this earth, all queendoms of this earth, all realms of this experience that we are having, all dimensions of space and time, not just on earth, but this entire cosmos. We are at a point in history, where we need to make a choice for ourselves. Are we going to continue down this path of staying in a personal sense of separation from source? Or are we going to step into our sovereignty and be fully present and fully available to witness and participate in what's happening right now in this shift? There's a lot of spiritual people who are completely ignoring the politics, which they may need to do because their systems are sensitive. And they're just focusing on the ascension and the light and things that are happening on that level. And we need those people to do that. We need those people to do that. Then we have the people that are on the front lines of the political war that need to do that. And then we have the celebrities and the false light matrix and the idol worshiping and the false matrix that has been established to support satanic operations, if you will, that is collapsing. And we need that to happen. In order to move forward, full transparency is what is required. In order to step into the next level of embodiment, into the next level of consciousness for humanity and all other beings, where we are able to interact with those other beings, whether they be galactic or animal, on the surface of the planet, the plants, whatever, where we're going is very different than what we have experienced up until this point, in these bodies anyway. It requires that we get fully present in and grounded in this physical matrix with our spiritual bodies intact, so that we can move forward intact in one body, in one beingness, as the command center of this reality, with all the support from all the other embodiments that we have, so that we can focus our energy on this transition on the earth. So whether you're political or not, what seems to be the turning point or the collective focus has become political, and the great awakening or the ascension or the shift or whatever you want to call that has become really a battle between the light and the dark. And if we take it from that perspective, right? And we take out the personalities, if we take out everything but looking at what is frequency wise is operating in the light and operating in the dark, it is very clear to see with your naked eyes what's really going on. You can see it plain as day. You can see the projections. You can see the blame. You can see the reactions. You can see the actions. You can see the heart. You can see the lack of soul. Yeah? You can see all of that if you're really paying attention. If you're in your body and you're occupying your physical body in your heart-centered intelligence as a human being in a body, as a spiritual being living in a human existence, you can actually see what's going on. You can take a step back out of your emotional body and look with your consciousness at all the different layers of reality that are being affected by these actions from either side, right? So some of the actions that some candidates are taking don't make sense. Some actions that are being not taken don't make sense. So there's on both sides of the coin, there are opinions flying, right? We need to step out of the opinions that are flying and we need to look at the positive movement forward out of the mess that we've been in for our entire lives due to the deep state. It goes way deeper than just one action or another. We are literally in a financial reset for the entire planet. And it, in reaction to that, you're seeing all of this crazy, almost like a simulation, as if we are being tested on, okay? And, you know, the fact that the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, just put out an educational, I think it's a video. I think they have a video as well. They have an instructional thing educating people about cryptocurrency should tell you something. That should tell you a couple of things. One, we are moving towards a cashless society and potentially having cash, but the main form of transactional frequency will be in a cryptocurrency. Because at the end of the day, money's just an idea. It's just a form of energy. Yes, we have paper money, but we also, what it's being utilized for are transactions, forms of exchange, right? So up until this point, and this is really important to understand why this has become political, okay? Because now we have a businessman with a financial background looking at the numbers of the activity of the deep state and what has happened and all the laws that have passed through Congress that are not benefiting our society. That's what's happening. And so as a result of that person looking with his eyes and seeing like, oh my God, this is bullshit. And the fact that we were sold out to other countries, that says a lot. Like all of a sudden it's like there's one person that's actually saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? And the fact that this has been planned over a long period of time, 20 or plus years, actually it's been going on since the 40s, but the actual crew that's in action right now has been planning this for 20 years. Okay? Ever since George W. Bush came into office. That is when it got serious. That's when they were like, oh shit, we're in trouble. Right? Because he was a puppet. He didn't think for himself. He didn't do anything for himself. He literally just regurgitated information. Okay? At that point, it was clear to all of us when the World Trade Center went down that we were entering into a phase that prior to that point, yeah, there was political upheaval. Yeah, there were like scandals happening in the White House, whatever. But the charm of that particular person that was in office at that time pulled the wool over our eyes. But when George W. Bush got into office, it became very clear that something else was going on and that we needed to pay attention. So then we were in survival mode. Then we were like, okay, the economy's fucked. We're gonna be in survival mode for a while here. Then it seemingly got better, right? Even though those elections were stolen, and we knew they were stolen and manipulated. It seemingly got better when a very charming person that swayed the population towards him based on, certain factors. So this has all been based on personality of one person at a time. Okay? So the personalities have determined a lot about the way that people have voted in the past. This should not be about the personality. This should be about actions being taken that are changing the framework and the infrastructure of our society. Now, there's a lot of actions that have been taken in this particular administration that people do not agree with, which is making it hard for them to make a decision one way or the other because they see what the other option is, which is complete insanity and incompetence, right? So that's how I felt last time. In 2016, there was no way I was going to vote. There was no way I was going to vote. We're not there anymore. Now we are at a place where if we don't vote, which it felt like last time too, right? But I left the country, you guys. I was done with America. I couldn't stand it anymore. I was like, get me the fuck out of here. I'm an expat. I'm done. And I was not coming back. And that's the truth. I would have lived anywhere else in the world but in America. I was so complete with that idea. And because of that, I gained strength. Because of that, I stepped out of my comfort zone and I was able to operate and function on a level that I never had before. And I learned a lot from that experience. And one of the things that I did learn is that I was abundant. And I was abundant for the first time in my entire life, other than when I worked for the deep state before, until they discovered what I was doing. And they kicked me out of that whole situation because I was making more money than the CEO of the company. So this was my second experience with being abundant in this lifetime, where I left the country and all of a sudden my finances were in upheaval, in the beginning, but once I cleared all the energies connected to that, boom, my abundance went through the roof. And I was free for the first time in my life. I wasn't under the suppression of the US dollar backed by petroleum being siphoned up to the Rothschilds, right? I was literally I was living in England too. Funny. I was living in England having this amazing abundant experience, right? It was fascinating. But what I discovered is the abundance was actually because of who was in office in America. Because people trusted the economy. They trusted the flow. They trusted the affluence and abundance that was flowing. Despite everything else, they still trusted the economy. And up until the beginning of this year, the first quarter of this year, that was the case. And yes, a lot of people were still struggling, but we were flowing. Like everybody was flowing on some level. We were picking up that momentum. It was starting to like go in the right direction. Let's just put it that way. Okay? So now we have a situation where the financials have been completely fucked. Not because of who's in office, but because of the reaction of those that have been in power and control up until this point. Because they lost their money. And they lost the ability to sacrifice children. Blood sacrifice, right? Caused by war, by satanic ritual. So they can no longer give credence or service to the one God that they worship, has an insatiable appetite for blood. Okay? This is real. This is what's happening on the planet right now. So it's important for us to understand that this goes way beyond who's in office or way beyond who makes it into office. It goes to the fundamental core of our existence, that we are literally working tirelessly around the clock to educate and inform everyone who's not paying attention, for them to wake up. This is the awakening process that this group of individuals is going through, which happens to be at a level of a tipping point right now. And if we all wake up to what's really going on, this world's gonna look a lot different on the other side of this election. Because we're not going backwards. We're not going back to what was happening in February. Nope. Or January. Or leading up to this in the last few months prior to COVID. We're not going back. This is new territory that we haven't even discovered yet. So getting clear about that in your consciousness is going to be very important moving forward. Because right now we have the power to determine our future. For the first time ever, we have the power to make a choice that will benefit our future and our future generations and the world at large. We, the people, actually have a choice now. We, the people, actually can take action for the first time and have it actually make a difference. By waking everyone up. We need to speak up, show up. We cannot sit this one out. We cannot sit there and watch everybody else do the work for us. We need to be involved. And in this case, that means, if it's in resonance with you, to vote. No matter what your choice is, your voice will make a difference here. For the first time, probably. Because all the elections prior to this have been rigged. Every single one of them. But this one, not so much. And believe me, they're going to try to rig it at all costs. They're going to try to rig this election. They're not going down without a fight. And I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans. I'm talking about evil versus good. So, whether that means you vote independent and you vote for a Native American candidate, or whether or not you vote for Trump, or whether or not you vote for Biden or Harris or whoever, Pelosi, voting will be considered this time around. Whereas before it was the Electoral College. And even though last time Trump, like supposedly, Clinton won by 3 million votes. They were neck and neck. And supposedly she won by 3 million votes in the population, which I find very hard to believe, actually. But the Electoral College superseded that. So what did they try to do? They tried to abolish the Electoral College, right? The other thing that is really important to understand here is that in the Constitution of the United States, which hasn't been taught in school since 1970, why? Because 1970 is the year that Agenda 21 was enacted. And as a result of that, they took out the teaching of the Constitution in the United States, the Declaration of Independence, okay? And the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Also, what was the other thing I was going to talk about in relation to that? Hold on. It was very important. They want to dumb us down. Oh, geography. So in the year 2007, they took geography out of the schools, so that anyone who has been educated from 2007 forward has not learned geography of the world. Why would they do that? I'll tell you why. So that people only focus on their immediate surroundings and they don't take into consideration the rest of their environment. So they're not looking outside of their little bubble, which then has been created as a virtual reality and a little world with electronics and a little black box, a little black mirror. Okay? It is very important to understand that the younger generations don't have a fighting chance right now. And it's heartbreaking. They are the adults of our future. They are the citizens of our future. And they don't have a fighting chance. All they know is TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, sometimes Facebook, and all of the other apps, online dating apps, feminism, young females being completely over-sexualized, hyper-sexualized, children's toys with pizzas, tattoos on their back when you put them in cold water, toys with little buttons underneath in between the legs that make sexual sounds that aren't listed on the package. This is what children have to deal with now. This is just one part of it. Okay? Then we have the foster system that is stealing children from their families, breaking up the nuclear family, and stealing children and trafficking them. Governors, mayors, police, people in positions of authority. Okay? And then we have the satanic cults, spirit cooking dinners, cannibals, blood drinking, vampiric rapists that are raping children and killing them and eating their flesh. This is real. This has been going on right under our noses for years. This didn't just start yesterday. This is an ancient practice of worship to gain power. Approximately, and we don't know how many, but just the ones that are documented in the United States alone, every year, 800,000 children, that doesn't include women, it just includes children under the age of 18, go missing in the United States. Now I'm going to double that number, because then we have undocumented children being born in underground tunnels from other children. They've never seen light. They've never been outside. This is real. I have seen footage of this. Okay? So when people talk to me about a mask or a virus, that doesn't pose a threat to me. I haven't been sick in 25 years. I'm not about to get sick with a pseudo virus that is like a common cold. And there's plenty of evidence to that fact. There's plenty of research that has been done. There are plenty of cures for this common cold. And many other people are dying because of what we are going through right now, because of this pandemic. Here's another point that we should understand about this. That executive order that was signed cannot be it cannot be addressed again for 6 months. Okay, so March 13th to September 13th. So we're coming up on September 13th, right? Technically, at that point, the acting president was no longer the president of the United States. Still acting as president, playing the role, but no longer technically our president. We are now under FEMA. Okay? However, because of, now originally FEMA was deep state. What I'm starting to understand, and I don't have 100% clarity about this, and I can't tell you where I got this information because I've been studying so many things and researching, but I will say this. It is my understanding that because of the way that this all went down, we're actually in a better position now because of what happened. Because now there are certain actions that can be taken to recreate our monetary system. It goes into all these levels, but basically the global financial reset that's happening right now, that will, GESARA NESARA will bring online the release of all the debt, personal debt, that citizens have in the United States, meaning mortgages, credit cards, student loans, those types of things. That's part of GESARA. It is necessary for everyone to be released of that debt. 2, there can be no bloodshed. There can be no war on the planet. 3, oh, and that is obviously why we have riots, right? If you think about it, that's why all this is happening. Then there's the weather modification and the engineered weather which is causing disasters, natural disasters that are affecting our food chain, right? Now that's their next move, is food shortage. You have to understand they are trying to wipe out 90% of the population. If you haven't heard of the Georgia Guidestones, you need to look that up. You need to read what it says on the Georgia Guidestones, because that is their doctrine, one of their doctrines, that they are going by, the deep state, the New World Order, whatever you want to call it. Mr. One person, Rothschild person that is in charge of the whole thing, the Lord, is worth $500 trillion. Okay? What this financial reset, and so currently there's what's called the SWIFT system, which is the system that the whole financial world is operating under. But now we have what's called the quantum financial system. And so right now they're running side by side. Okay? And as of the end of this month, the SWIFT system is going completely offline, which means that the quantum financial system will be the primary financial system of the entire planet. Now, the SWIFT system was funneling all the money up to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, two families, and all their little minions, right? Now, the quantum financial system is such that everything is monitored, and you can't do anything without, you can't make any financial transaction. It's full transparency. So there's no way for them to use that money towards the trafficking of humans or anything on that level, right? So they're running out of money, and they're freaking out and panicking, and they're trying to raise money from the population to donate to Black Lives Matter movement, Act Blue. You know, they're trying to funnel it through the Democratic Party, in America anyway. And in other countries, they're doing even more fear-based, fear-mongering things, activities, and like locking down the entire system, because they don't have the same setup here that we do, where there's a voting process and all of that going on. They're not in an election year, so the leaders that are in positions there of power are actually locking their citizens in their homes, basically, and enacting horrible things on their population. And for example, in Sweden, they're, you know, where they didn't lock down originally, right? Now they're like they're saying that they're going to quarantine the children in the schools, and they're not going to allow the children and their parents, for their parents to have access to their children. This is happening in Sweden, in other countries in that area. But Germany has rose up, the Netherlands has rose up. There's been many marches. Everyone's rising up and rebelling. And now in England, where the where the Queen and where the palace has been shut down for months, okay, with no explanation to the public other than they were in quarantine in another place for coronavirus. That was their excuse, right? Now they just had a march for Save the Children, and they were chanting pedophile, pedophiles, 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 pedophiles in front of the gates of the Buckingham Palace in London. This just happened today or yesterday, okay? So there are marches now going on around the world for saving the children, and like that this is the real pandemic that we're dealing with, is what's happening with the children. So the fact that at this point, 5.5 months in, that celebrities are now coming forward to endorse Joe Biden, celebrities that are outwardly satanic celebrities coming forward to support Joe Biden, is a clear indication of who is steering what, okay? Also, Sean Penn. So it's just really interesting to me that these people are still pushing the narrative of this killer virus that everybody knows is not a killer virus. And if you don't know that, do your research, because it's not a killer virus. The only people that have died that had the virus in their bodies. So what we need to understand is the virus itself was already existing within our bodies. The coronavirus was already in our bodies. Okay? And they say a novel virus. So there's a lot of speculation about the testing and whether or not they're testing properly and whether or not the tests are even. So they're testing positive and then they're testing negative right after that. Right? Or what's also interesting is that what they're testing with is putting it into the body. There's also people testing positive for coronavirus that never took the test, and their results were sent back to them, and it was positive, even though they never actually submitted a sample. So this tells you that there's fuckery all across the board. Mail-in ballots. I mean, the fuckery is real, you guys. Like, it is so insane. It is so ridiculous. Any normal, conscious human being that is using their reasonable mind and not allowing their emotional bodies to rule their consciousness knows that this is not what they say it is, that it's a hoax, okay? It's not that there isn't something happening, because there absolutely is. But the people that are dying, there's actually less people dying this year than there were last year. Number one. Number two, the ones that are quote unquote dying from coronavirus or COVID or whatever you want to call it, the virus, they are comorbidity. Most of them are elderly and have weak or weakened immune systems. So they already had a pre-existing condition, or they died of a car accident and then were labeled as a COVID death. So we need to understand that that is not real. That those test numbers are not real. Okay? So if we're staying in fear because of this thing, this imaginary enemy, this invisible enemy, right? At 5.5 months in, wake the fuck up. Wake up. Wake up. That is not what's happening. Look at all the riots. Nobody was concerned about the riots then. They're still trying to doctor the numbers to show that the riots are having an effect, but then they're saying that it's okay to have a public protest and freedom of speech, even though there's a lockdown going on. Really? And then the only cities that are actually being affected are Democratic. This is not about a virus. This is not about anything other than trying to make one particular situation look worse over the other and to hide so that the public doesn't find out what's really going on. And there's only really a few people in the world right now that are fighting to the end of the freedom of the human being. And those are the people that need to be supported. And if you pay attention, you'll know exactly who those people are, because it's really clear. Really clear. The actions show you. Okay, another thing. Q. Okay, how on earth could anybody in their right mind think for a second that Q is a conspiracy? It's a military operation. period. It's calculated down to the minute. Like literally to the minute. The activities are calculated down to the minute. We have been given information that's happening now. We were given 2 years ago. This is all by design. And it's not to the end of it being world domination and control. It's the opposite of that. It's to free the population of the earth from total domination and control. I mean, all of the people involved have exposed themselves as nut jobs. The leader of the World Health Organization is a terrorist. He's a known terrorist from Ethiopia, I think it is. He was like, genocides happened under his watch. And now he's the leader of the World Health Organization. Like, if you look at who the people are, the main players that are involved here, they don't have good reputations. And we're not saying that the other ones do, but they're definitely not on that level, right? So when you start to look at the details of each person and like who's involved and like what their history is and like what their activities have been in the past, it shows a very clear delineation of who is who, right? And there's an absence of heart with these people. There's an absence of compassion. There's only fear, blame, projection, and control. So if you look at those dynamics and you see who's playing out those dynamics, it's very clear to see that one is in reaction to something else. One is in reaction to that level of attempt of control, and one is cleaning up the mess, and the others are just trying to keep control and losing their grip. It's so clear. Like, I don't have to say who's who. It's just, you got to look with your own eyes. So for the first time in my life, I'm interested in voting. But what I found out is you don't have to have a party affiliation in order to vote for either party, whoever. You don't have to be registered in any particular political affiliation, which is huge because I don't want to adhere myself to one particular party. I'm not interested in taking sides. What I'm interested in is, if I'm going to vote, I'm voting for the good, whoever those people are. And I'm using my gut instinct, and I'm going to do my research to find out who those people are. Because the House of Representatives will be voted on as well. And that's huge. That's like 430 members. So we should be researching who these people are that are in Congress, right? Like, we need to know who's behind those closed doors that are making decisions. Period. We need to know who those people are. So with that, I'm just like, I'm going to finish this video, and then I'm going to read, actually. The next thing I'm going to read tonight, I'm going to read a chapter from this book, okay? That's my next little ditty right now. I hope you enjoyed my little lecture. I feel like I'm lecturing. But I just wanted to share my experience and my perspective on all of this because I felt like it was important. I don't know. That's just me. Toodles.